For the record, will you please state your first name and your last name and spell both?
Deon, D-E-O-N, Hardison, H-A-R-D-I-S-O-N.
And Mr. Hardison, you're an inmate in a state correctional facility, is that true?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime before?
Yes, sir.
How many times?
13 as I can think.
Now, Mr. Hardison, at one point, you were incarcerated in the Kenosha County Jail for a while, is that true?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember when you were transported to the Kenosha County Jail, who rode to the jail with you?
A few people.
Do you remember any of their names?
As I can think of, Dillard, I don't know his last name, but a guy Dillard,
Well, the other one doesn't matter, but one of the persons that you rode with was Aaron Dillard, is that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, were you and Aaron Dillard housed in the same cell block or a different cell block?
Same.
Were there any other inmates in the cell block that you see anywhere in this courtroom today?
Right there. Yes.
And I know you were pointed over toward the defense table. Who was seated at the defense table that was in the county jail at the same time that you and Mr. Dillard were?
Mark.
Mark Jensen?
Yes.
And your record show the witness identified the defendant?
I don't believe he has yet.
Okay, well, why don't you stand up and point at the person that was in the county jail with you?
Right there.
And is he seated on the right side or in the middle?
He's wearing the reddish tie.
Pointing at the accused, you may be seated.
So it wasn't Mr. Elby in the county jail with you, it was Mr.
No.
Dillard. Okay.
That finger.
When you were in the county jail with Mr. Dillard and Mr. Jensen, did you ever see Mr. Dillard speaking with Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
And did you ever hear what Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard were talking about?
Not completely hear him, but Dillard would come back and try to get me to listen to him talk.
What would Mr. Dillard say to you in order to get you to try to listen to their talk?
Objection, hearsay.
It's not requesting a factual assertion, Your Honor. It's
Yeah, the objection's overruled.
He would tell me that he's telling him about his case and everything. He's telling him that he
Objection, it's going to be repeating hearsay.
The objection, it doesn't sound like it's being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
And then 90403, it's the same thing, and it's not necessary to tell what happened next.
Read the question again, please.
What would Mr. Dillard say to you in order to get you to try to listen to their talk?
The objection's overruled.
That means you can answer the question, sir. So what did Mr. Dillard say to you in order to try to induce you to try to listen in on the conversation that occurred between Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard?
He would tell me that he's telling him about his case, about, that what he did and all this and that, about what happened.
So as a consequence of what Mr. Dillard said to you, did you try to listen in on the conversation between Mr. Dillard and Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
And what efforts would you describe to the jury what you would do in order to try to listen in on the conversation?
I would move to the back of the, he would tell me to go to the back of the little table or whatever, close by him or whatever. But every time I got close by him, he just stopped talking most.
Who would stop talking, Mr. Dillard or Mr. Jensen?
Mr. Jensen.
How many times would you say that Mr. Dillard approached you to make these statements to you about what Mr. Jensen was saying?
A few times, at least from about 3, 4.
Over how long course of period of time? Was this one day or several days?
It was like 2, 3 days he was talking to.
Now, how long were you in this cell block with Mr. Dillard and Mr. Jensen?
A week, around about a week.
And when did these conversations between Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard commence?
Basically, soon as we moved over the next day.
So was this the second day you were in the cell block?
Yeah,
And when was the first time that Mr. Dillard came over to you and asked you to try to listen in on the conversation?
that day. The next day.
Now, what I want you to do, to the best of your ability, is tell the jury exactly what Mr. Dillard said to you the first time he approached you.
Objection, hearsay.
Well, if it's confined to what you've already spoken of,
Yes, that's,
I don't see it as hearsay.
For Mr. Dillard to say what's been being told to him, it's being...
What? No. That's not what I understand the question to seek out. If it does, then you're correct.
That's what I understand.
well, that's, all I asked the witness is to tell me what it was that Mr. Dillard first said to him as clearly as he, with as much detail as he can, what Mr. Dillard said to him in order to get him to come over
Right.
and listen in on the conversation. That's the purpose of this examination of this particular witness.
I understand, and
Judge, all that's necessary is Mr. Dillard said something to me, so I moved him back to listen. That's...
No, because it loses the flavor as no, I'm not gonna, no, we're not gonna discuss it further.
Well, it just becomes hearsay then.
And-
90403. Improper bolstering.
Go ahead and answer you can answer the questions or the objections overruled.
Do you want to remember what the question was, sir?
Can you repeat?
Okay, I'll give it another go. Can you remember?
Why don't we do this? Before Mr. Jensen said anything, did you have a conversation with Mr. Dillard?
Before he said anything to Dillard?
On the particular occasion we're talking about, before there was any conversation between Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard, did Mr. Dillard say anything to you?
No.
Am I misunderstanding what we're talking about?
Well, I don't know if I understood what you were asking about, but
You're not the first person with that.
we might be two ships crossing in the night.
I'll let you ask your own question, but there is some risk here, and I don't want to.
Okay.
Are you still on the same topic you were before about
Yes.
awakening the witness to what was going to happen or what was expected to happen?
All I'm trying to get this witness to describe in as much detail and as accurately as he can is to tell us what it was Mr. Dillard said to him in order to induce him or persuade him to try to come over and listen in on the conversation that was occurring between Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard.
You can maybe able to detect from the discussion we're having, I have some degree of apprehension that what you're about to hear may not be something that would be suitable evidence in the case. So keep in mind that whatever you hear, it may be necessary for me to tell you to disregard it, but we just took a break, so I think we're going to be all right, but go ahead. Can you answer the question?
I've asked it 3 times. Do you remember it now, Mr. Hardison?
Yes, he would come and tell me, he's telling him about,
All right, I can see already we're on a bad road.
I'll just ask another question.
Why don't you do that?
Now, how many times did Mr. Dillard try to get you to come over and listen to these conversations?
like 3-4 times.
Now, each time that Mr. Dillard would try to get you to come in and listen to the conversations, did you try to move over there and listen into the conversation?
Yes.
And each time that you would try to get in and listen in the conversation, what would happen?
He would just shut down.
Who would shut down, Mr. Dillard or Mr. Jensen?
Mark Jensen.
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
I'm starting to hear the answer.
Mark Jensen.
Now, at some point you and Mr. Jensen remained in the cell block after Mr. Dillard left. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have occasion to talk with Mr. Jensen at that point?
Yes, sir.
Tell us anything you can remember about the conversations that occurred between you and Mr. Jensen after Mr. Dillard left the cell block.
We basically just talked about getting his bond back, getting out on bond for him, and how the subject came around about the leg monitor or whatever, or get a bond reduction and get leg monitor. And we talked about that, the leg monitor, and he was like, he said that he can get out on leg monitor, but then he asked me, he was like, can you leave on leg monitor? And I was like, yeah, you can get a pass to leave on leg monitor. And he was like, well, can you leave on leg monitor? And I was like, yeah, if you want to catch an escape. That's it.
Did he give you any further explanation as to what he meant by leaving on a leg monitor?
No,
But you indicated you'd get an escape if he left on a leg monitor.
yeah, that's it.
Was there any further discussion that you can recall occurring between you and Mr. Jensen at that time?
No, sir.
Did you ever see anybody picking on Mr. Jensen or bothering Mr. Jensen?
No,
Did Mr. Jensen have any documents or any transcripts or anything of significance in his cell like that you saw?
all his casework was in the cell.
Did you ever see anybody go into Mr. Jensen's cell and start reading that without his permission?
Just as Sully was in there, that was it.
Do you know who his cellie was?
No.
I'm sorry, do you know what?
Do you know who his cellie was? A cellie is his cellmate,
Yes.
and you don't know who his cellmate was?
I don't remember he had two.
He had more than one cellmate?
Yeah, when I was there.
Well, where were these cellmates when Mr. Jensen was talking with Mr. Dillard?
They were either be in the room sleep or out watching TV in the front of it.
Did you ever see Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard talking about the case when there was another person present?
Yes, but I don't remember his name. He got out of jail.
Was it one of Mr. Jensen's cellmates, or was it somebody else?
Someone else.
Was it a white person or a black person?
White.
But do you remember his name?
No.
While you were in this cell block with Mr. Jensen and Mr. Dillard, was there any person other than you who tried to come over and listen in on the conversation going on between Mr. Dillard and Mr. Jensen?
Not that I know of, except for the guy that was in room 6. That's the guy that he talked to most of the time anyway.
The guy in cell 6?
Yeah.
And was that the cell that Mr. Jensen was in, or was he in a different cell?
He was in cell 2.
So there was a person in cell 6 at the time that you and Mr. Dillard...
He was already there. But
Okay. And you don't remember that person's name?
No.
Was there more than one person in cell 6?
No, it's a one-man cell.
So cell 6 was a one-man cell.
Yeah.
But cell 2 had 3 people in it?
2.
2 people.
One of his cellies left, and another one came. They
I see.
bring another one put in there.
I don't have any further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
Probably. Mr. Hardison, you have 13 prior convictions.
Yes, sir.
You're in prison now.
Yes, sir.
How long is the sentence you're serving?
3 years. I get out November 12th, 2009.
And you're aware that you can apply for a sentence adjustment
What is
with 25% or 15% of your sentence to go, right?
75%?
After you've completed 75 or 85%
Yeah,
of
I
your
heard about that.
Right, and it would be nice if Mr. Jambois, your prosecutor, wrote a letter to help you get that sentence adjustment, right?
Well, I wasn't looking forward to that.
You've seen the benefits of cooperation before, right?
Yes.
I mean, another thing that could happen is your lawyer could ask for a sentence modification based on your cooperation, right?
My case is over. Everything is over.
Right, you could come back to court and say, I cooperated, I'd like some time off, right?
Well, you could, but I can put in myself to the judge for a sentence modification. I don't need my lawyer.
Okay, so you might just do that on your own.
Yeah, I could.
And in terms of prior cooperation, in a case in 2005, you were facing 9 counts and over 100 years of possible time, right?
I think so.
And you cooperated and they gave you straight probation, right?
Yes.
And you were only convicted on one of those 9 counts, right?
Yes.
And what happened is after you're in court, you're supposed to go to the probation office, right?
Yes.
But it was too late in the day, so you couldn't go until the next afternoon, right?
Yes.
And you went and you met with your probation officer, right?
Yes.
And you said, I need to go to Arkansas to live with family because I'm scared to be in Kenosha, right?
Yes.
Because you had cooperated and had all that time cut off, right?
Yes, but I already was living there.
Already living in Arkansas.
Yeah, I already had moved.
And she said, well, I can't let you go to Arkansas, but I'll give you a travel permit to Illinois, right?
Yes.
And you said, you said you wanted to go to Illinois just to be safe, right?
Go to my dad's house until the permit was, till the interstate compact was complete.
And you met with your agent for a couple hours, right?
Yes.
And you told her you wouldn't get in trouble if you went to Illinois, right?
Yes.
And then within 2 hours of leaving that probation office, a police officer came up behind the car you were in, right?
Yes.
Your brother was driving the car.
Yes.
Right? And you were in the passenger seat.
Yes.
And the cop car started to try to pull you over.
Yes.
And you had $4,680, right?
No, I didn't have it.
You had crack cocaine, right?
No, I didn't have it.
And you started giving it to your brother and saying, throw this out the window, I can't get 12 years.
No.
And your brother started throwing crack cocaine out the window, right?
He did.
The very day after you were sentenced, right?
Yes.
And he said it was yours, right?
Yes, but then he made an affidavit before saying that it was his and that I wasn't a party to a crime of anything he committed. But it got overlooked and
He said it. He said it was yours, and that you said, "I'm going to get 12 years. You'll only get paper."
No.
Right? Did he say that?
he said it, yes, but I didn't tell him that.
Right. And that was your crack cocaine that was being thrown out the window.
No.
And well, you were convicted for possessing it, right?
I took a plea for it, yes.
You pled guilty to possessing the crack cocaine.
Yes.
And that's one of the things you're in prison for now.
Yes.
And you had that probation that you had in that really good deal with revoked, right?
Yes.
Now, you've been convicted, well, there was one case where an officer pulled you over and it's interesting, you got pulled over and you gave him the name Anthony Nelson, right?
Yes, that was long ago.
And the police thought, well, what happened is that you suddenly found out that Anthony Nelson had stolen a car, so that wasn't such a good name to use, right?
No, that's the wrong case.
Well, and then you told them, well, not really Anthony Nelson, I'm really Randall Terrell Williams.
Objection, Your Honor. I object to
Wrong
counsel using
case.
the conjunctive with the next question after the witness has denied the truth of the last question.
I think that's a valid
If I
point.
did, that would be wrong. After, you did give the officer the name Anthony M. Nelson, right?
I did that before, yes.
And then he found out that you weren't Anthony M. Nelson, right?
Yes.
And then you tried telling the same officer that you were Randall Terrell Williams.
Yes. Yes.
And you got caught doing that too, right?
Yes.
So you were convicted twice of obstructing on that, right?
I think it was one obstruction.
And you've also used the names with police officers of Deon Cortez, right?
That's my name.
You're Deon Hardison, right?
Deon Cortez, Hardison.
All right. And you've used the name of Willie Pope.
Yes.
You've used the name of No Love Hardison.
No.
Do you know why that's on your
It's on my arm. That's
Okay.
it. It's a tattoo. I never used it.
Now, back in Do you have any mental health problems, Mr. Hardison?
Had, yes.
I'm sorry?
I had, yes.
You don't have them anymore?
I got treatment for it.
Are you still taking medication?
No.
And you've had hallucinations in the past, right?
In the past, yes.
You've had suffered from delusions,
Yes.
right? And you've also in the past told people that you have a very bad memory, right?
In the past, when I started stressing out, yes.
And it was your bad memory that caused you not to return from a leave for a funeral, right?
That kind of got misworded because they say gave me a, what do you call it, furlough, but I couldn't get a furlough because I was already on a felony hold from Illinois, and something got mixed up with my lawyer in Illinois and the lawyer in Wisconsin, and I didn't get represented on that right either.
I'm sorry, and I what?
I never got represented on that right either.
So are the 13 convictions you have the fault of your lawyers?
No, not all of them.
Now, you were aware when you were in J Block that there were people looking at Mark's discovery, right?
He was showing people his work
And they-
before. He would show him and talk to him about him.
Okay, other inmates had a chance to read the documents that Mark had in his cell, right?
The only one that I knew of was the guy in cell 6
Well,
that he showed.
you said that Mark was basically showing people his discovery. Aaron Dillard was looking at his discovery, right?
He was talking to Aaron Dillard about it.
Are you saying Aaron Dillard didn't look at his discovery?
I don't even remember him looking at his discovery.
Okay,
I
so
remember him talking to him about it, and
whatever you were watching, you didn't see Aaron Dillard looking
I didn't
at
see
Mark's
him
discovery.
go in this room looking at his discovery. No.
Okay. And you remember giving a statement that was video recorded
Video
with
recording?
Mr. Jamboys and Miss Gabrielle and the detective?
No. I didn't get no videotape.
Do you remember giving a statement to Mr. Jamboys, Miss Gabrielle, and the detective?
I never talked to her.
Oh,
And I
maybe, I'm
just
sorry.
met him
Maybe it
yesterday
was just the detective,
at the Brown County Jail. Yeah.
Detective Miles?
Yeah.
And when you gave that statement to Detective Miles, you told him Mark was going around showing basically everybody on the block, mostly his discovery and his paperwork, right?
I didn't say it like that. We kind of got messed up showing that one guy. That's basically who I meant everyone.
And that's basically what?
Who I meant everyone. That
Okay, but
one
you
guy.
acknowledge that you told Detective Miles
Yes.
in October that he was basically showing everybody.
Yeah.
And you recall that people were stealing Mark's commissary?
Before I came over there, they were saying something about a young kid. The young kids that were over there were acting wild, and they were stealing everybody's commissary. Stole Dillard's commissary.
So after you got there, they stole Dillard's commissary?
Yes.
The very first day?
Yes.
What did Dillard have that they stole, do you recall?
He all kind of commissary, basically noodles and stuff like that.
And so did they threaten Dillard and take his stuff, or just sneak in and take
No,
it?
they just snuck in Dillard's room and took it.
And were you aware of them taking Mark's stuff?
No.
And that happened a lot, that when people would go on a visit or even go down to the other side of the cell blocks, some of these
can't.
people would take stuff.
They can't, you can see them if you're in the cell block. You can see if someone goes in your room, because it's not that large.
Well, while you were there, like the day after you got there, these two young guys beat a man, right?
Yes,
A guy named Michael Clark, right?
yes, I think that's his name.
And how would you describe Michael Clark?
Well, I came down with him too. I think he was one of the guys came on the red too. He's older guy. He's kind of calm about things and everything. He didn't get into no trouble like that.
Clark is just a calm guy, you said?
He's calm.
And he was kind of an older white guy?
Yes.
And these two young guys wanted to take his food, right?
Yes.
His lunch, was it?
I think that was lunch.
And he resisted them, right?
Yes.
And what they did is they filled a sock full of dominoes and beat him.
They did.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe there's any foundation for this witness to be testifying about this. I don't believe this occurred while he was there.
I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
And everybody in the cell block knew this was going on, right?
Yes. They seen it.
Because it made a huge commotion, right?
Yes.
And nobody stepped in to help Mr. Clark.
Again, I
right?
object. There's no foundation for this.
Well, the critical point is whether this is something that was commonly known. And when you say it's widely known, I suppose,
Said everybody
unless
knew.
it's known by the accused, it's irrelevant.
Right. Well, I mean, everybody in the block knew. You have, what, 10 people in that cell block?
Something like that, yeah.
Right. And every one of those people knew that these two guys are beating Michael Clark.
That they jumped on him for
Right.
a few minutes, yes.
Right. Mr. Jensen knew that, right?
Yes.
And they were beating him with the dominoes, right?
Yes.
And they beat him so hard that the sock broke open and the dominoes went everywhere.
Yes.
And then they beat him with a bar of soap in the sock, right?
I didn't see no soap.
And then after a little while, a guard came, right?
Yes.
And Michael Clark was bleeding.
Yes.
And Michael Clark tried to tell the guard about what had happened to him, right?
Yes.
And then one of these guys who had been beating him, when he started to tell what happened, he rushed in again and started beating him again right in front of the guard.
Again,
Yeah.
objection. I don't see the relevance of this. This is also happening to inmate Clark. How is this relevant?
Right?
Yes.
And that was frightening to people in the cell block?
Yeah.
It was frightening to you, right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like you were very well protected in there, did it?
Well, no, not really. No.
And it also, you knew from that if you told that somebody beat you, you might get another beating, right?
Who told?
If you told, like Michael Clark started to tell the guard, and then they came and gave him another beating.
The young boy jumped on him in front of the guard.
And you had heard around the cell block that these people had beaten Mark before, right?
I heard when I came in that he got into it with the little young boy or whatever, but it wasn't out there like that. No.
Okay. Now, during that interview with Detective Miles, you said something about still taking depression pills?
No, I haven't took those in years. I didn't say I still took them.
And at bottom of page
Well,
12.
I'm not sure that, what this depression would have to do. Hallucination's quite another matter. But I don't think a general inquiry into his mental health is relevant.
And I was following up, you indicated he wasn't taking medication, and it sounds like he was.
Depends on the nature of the malady.
And ultimately,
Well, and it would depend on the nature of the medication, too. Go ahead.
well, are you telling us right now that you weren't on medication at that time?
No.
No, you're not telling him, or no, I wasn't on
I
medication?
wasn't on medication.
Didn't you tell the detective that you were?
No.
And ultimately, you never heard Mark Jensen confess to anything, right?
No.
Correct? Yeah, I'm correct. You never heard that.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardison. That's all.
Anything?
Mr. Hardison, did you ever ask me for any benefit at all in exchange
No.
for your testimony?
No.
Have I ever offered you anything in exchange for your
No.
testimony? Nothing further.
Mr. Hardison, along those lines, did you meet with the prosecutor last night?
Yes.
How long did you meet with him for?
Just few minutes, not that long.
And you're aware, again, if people are happy with your job here, you can ask the court to reduce your sentence, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Thank you. That's all.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
You may sit down, sir.